Hey, this is Matt once again. We're about to end the video. This is another paid request. This time for Corey. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And yeah, it could be review, commentary, re-review, reaction, topic, video game playthrough, what have you. Feel free to send it. Links are down below in the info box, and he wanted me to do a commentary, then a review of this film, Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man. I'll do my best. I have a pause at the beginning. It is 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 18 seconds. 3, 2, 1, pressing play. Universal International. Now, I do remember enjoying this film quite a bit. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I do have the Abbott Costello box set over there. And I'll probably say, from what I remember, this is my second favorite Abbott Costello movie. Because, well, what happened was, we only had about 3 or 4 channels: ABC, CBS, another form of CBS, and PBS. And the only way to rent movies is either there's 2 towns nearby, kind of equal length but on different directions, and each one had like a gas station you could rent VHS tapes. Or when we go to get groceries, maybe rent a tape there, but it's so far away, it's not something you want to do too often. And they didn't have, a lot of stuff. So my aunt would send us tapes of X-Files or Simpsons or Three Stooges or the TV show Elf or movies like this. So it'd be like Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein, Abbott Costello meet the Invisible Man, Butt Privates, Pardon My Sharon, Butt Privates Come Home. Like, those were the Abbott Costello films I grew up with for the longest time. That's probably why they're my favorites, because I'm so used to them, watch them over and over again. And I am an Abbott Costello fan. I do think the two work very well together. You have Bud Abbott, the more serious, straightforward guy, and Luke Costello, the more sillier, goofier guy. I do think they made a really good team. And, I mean, throughout the... I mean, from what I understand, they were one of the biggest box office attractions of the 1940s. And by, I guess, the end of the decade, there was talks of, like, their business is slowing down until they did Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, which Abbott Costello did not want to do that film. They did not want to do Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. They thought it was such a stupid idea. What's going on? They didn't want to be on set. And lo and behold, you could say that was their most popular film of any they've done. That's why you would see a ton of these type of films afterward. Meet the Invisible Man, Meet the Killer Boris Karloff, which is funny because I don't think Boris Karloff is the killer in that. Meet Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, which I think also had Boris Karloff. Meet the Mummy. They meet like most of the monsters throughout it. I mean, I'd probably say my favorites would be Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, then this one, then either Butt Privates or Pardon My Sharon. I'll go with Pardon My Sharon, then Butt Privates, then Butt Privates Come Home. I would say that's my top 5. Louis Francis, private investigator. I didn't... Just a different type of comedy back in the day. And maybe that's why... Because when I grew up watching comedies, it was either the old stuff of Red Skelton, Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, or it was other type of comedies like Wicked and Bernie, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop, where it's either slapstick or very verbal in terms of humor. And maybe that's why those are more the comedies I go more towards. While other people, they go more towards like raunchy comedies or things of that nature. Now it's interesting that at the end of Meet Frankenstein, there is an invisible man there that kind of added almost a afterthought. It was voiced by Vincent Price. So I'm surprised they didn't try to get Vincent Price for this, but I guess because the plot, the guy's supposed to be a boxer, and I guess maybe they don't. Oh, I don't know if Vincent Price could really be believed as a boxer, or Vincent Price didn't want to do it, or Steele just didn't want to hire him. I don't know. And the thing with Abbott Costello is that some of these films were still continued to be hits until, as years went down, Abbott and Costello just were not that close, and till they really butted heads against each other. And there were, each one had their own vices. I think Lou Costello, a daughter of his had passed away, or a kid. I think Lou Costello, one of his kids had passed away, and Bud Abbott had some type of addiction. When you look deeper into it, there's some sad tragedy to it all. And then after a bit, they started really disliking each other, and then they broke up. In fact, the last thing Lou Costello did was a movie without Bud Abbott. It was I forget the name, but it was a take on the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. But I know that's not exactly what it was called. And Lou Costello died shortly thereafter. And it was sort of a sad end to the team, because when they were together in their prime, they really hit it out of the park. I mean, they had their own Cold Date Comedy Hour show. Probably their best routine was Who's on First. Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on, the whole thing. Like, it's just give it a watch if you want to on YouTube. It's a great verbal comedic skit. Just very quick-witted back and forth. Now, this director, I believe, would go on to direct a chunk of the other Abbott Costello films after this. I think Meet the Mummy, and yeah, I know this director worked with Abbott Costello a few more afterward. That's why I was like surprised. Oh, they didn't get the guy that they did Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein with, but maybe at that time that there was probably enough friction between him and how Abbott Costello acted on, since they didn't really want to do the movie. The director's probably like, nah, fuck you, I don't want to work with those guys again. Now, of course, this is on the invisibility formula, which I didn't grow up with the Invisible Man movie, but I did see that. I probably saw it for the first time. I can't remember when I first saw it. Probably around 2012, 2013, 2014, like that era. So, like 10 years ago. And I enjoyed it. Because I didn't grow up with the Universal monster movies like other people did. The horror films I grew up with were Nightmare on Elm Street films, among other stuff. Dracula, Frankenstein, I would see clips of them and compilations like Monster Mania, hosted by Jack Palance, or documentaries about horror, history of horror, but I had not seen those films in full until, again, probably a decade ago. Now that right there, that picture is the actor from the original Invisible Man. So I guess in a way, trying to showcase this is a sequel to that movie. In a way, I can't remember if it's the same character name, but that is the same actor who was in the original The Invisible Man. And yeah, I did see The Invisible Man and rather liked it. I thought actually became one of my favorites of that monster era movies. Okay, I like Dracula. I like Frankenstein. I really like The Invisible Man. Not bait on the Wolfman and not bait on the Creature from Black Lagoon. Don't mind Bride of Frankenstein. Some of Frankenstein's okay. But again, Creature from Black Lagoon and the Wolfman I wasn't really bait on. And that era of Phantom of the Opera, I remember thinking I actually like the silent film version better of Lon Chaney than that. Was it 40s? That era of Phantom of the Opera wasn't bait on. Am I a crook? You want me to answer that? Like I said, despite the fact that for a chunk of their career they didn't like each other, in a way maybe that kind of works on screen where, you know, Bud Abbott is always talking. It's funny, like on screen, like Bud Abbott is always talking down on Luke Costello, but it seemed like in real life it was the opposite, and Luke Costello was much more of the almost was a dominating presence of the two. Like from what you hear about, Luke Costello was definitely in real life not how he was on screen. On screen he comes out much more innocent and lovable, and in real life he's much more boisterous, cursing, that type of thing. But I mean, they're actors. I mean, they're playing a role. They're playing these type of characters sufficient for this era with what you can and can't do on screen. Very limited to what you can and can't do on screen in this era. Movie form much more innocent times. And Luke Costello was a great comedic actor. He could really sell being steered, being this innocent, that he had a big heart and he meant well. And when he's steered, he had that certain laugh, that, yeah, or even being steered. Now, granted, his hand would not go. His hands wouldn't go through because his hand would still be there. It's just he can't see it. But maybe the fact is that he just it slid off or something. But it's still kind of cool how they did this back in the day. Like you see this, it's like a guy with no head and no hands. Before the days with CGI and all that, it still I think looks pretty neat with how they were able to do this with these old school effects back in the day. I still think it looks pretty cool. The pants just undoing themselves and coming down. Yeah, I can't blame him. You stripped him. Yeah, not always on his toes. How did he disappear? In installments. Yeah, first his head, and then other places it's disappeared. Yeah, what do you mean wearing air? Yeah, that's what I thought. This cop, I thought he looked familiar. This cop on the right, talking with Luke Costello on the right here. This guy's a psycho. I've ever seen one. That's William Frawley. He was on the TV show I Love Lucy as the neighbor and the landlord Fred. So yeah, I Love Lucy. I know he looks familiar, but I wanted to double check. So this film was filmed between October and November of 1950s. Special effects were created by Stanley Horsley, son of cinema pioneer David Horsley. He also did special effects for The Invisible Man Returns, The Invisible Woman, and Invisible Agent. A photo is featured of the serum's inventor, Dr. John Jack Griffin, which is actually a picture of Claude Rains, who played the role in Universal's first Invisible Man movie. Now, this music is pretty much the same music from Abbott, Costello Meet Frankenstein. Do you always see things only with my eyes open? Do you always... See, back in the day, my brother and I were walking down the street, and they disappeared. In the thin air? No, into a manhole. You know where the subconscious comes from? The subway. I mean, some of the stuff is very silly, but the fact that the character believes in it, it's the acting is sincere. I'm counting cows. Cows? Why? I'm allergic to sheep. Oh yeah, okay, I remember this. He can't sleep. Just I can't sleep. I'm trying to concentrate on this thing. There we go. And that's the thing with the world of today. Let's put it this way: back in the day, we were limited in what we could find with entertainment, but at the same time, in a weird way, the limitation helped because when you only had a certain bits of things to watch or find for entertainment, you could find stuff that became gems or you maybe would not have seen before, but then you became fans of and or at least knowledgeable on. So with the world of today, that's no longer the case. Let's say back to the day, you were only limited to what was on TV, on your few channels you have, or what you could get on VHS tape. And because of that, it's like, okay, well, you're watching this, and some of them are duds, but some become gems. But when you do that enough times, you kind of catch up on what's out there from the past and the current time. Nowadays, though, there's so much product being just pushed down people's throats in terms of streaming services that if you think about what should I watch, you clicked on a streaming and it just bombarded with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of current product. So there's no way anybody would even think of finding movies like this. And even if they did, who knows if they could even try to think of enjoying something like this. But as a kid nowadays, whether it be they're so used to different types of humor, weight, black and white, or weight, the different type of acting and technical aspects in the world of TikTok and all Twitter and all this other social media stuff. Sleight of hand. Give you one, take the other. Using his head. Luke Costello using his head. But I was saying that I just want to get in as sadly a lot of these older films I think will be forgotten and left in the past. I mean, I was born in 1983. By the time I even were figuring out movies was when I'm 7 years old in 1990. And even by that point, these films are, 40 years old. So it's not like these are films of my current youth. It's just they were older films I just happened to find and watch and enjoy when I was a kid. Will comedic actors like Abbott and Costello, Three Stooges, Low and Hardy, the Marx Brothers ever be looked upon, thought of, given a chance, watched by kids of today? If not, then that's a shame because, granted, we all have our different tastes, but I think they'll be missing out on good entertainment and content. Just, I don't know. I think these are very enjoyable, fun pieces of entertainment. Again, like Three Stooges and this and other stuff that, if these are in a way forgotten, like, are these films going to be found on streaming platforms, which is where most people find this stuff nowadays? Because I don't think these films have gotten Blu-ray. I don't think the Three Stooges never gotten Blu-ray. Even then, would they give a shit, or will they be promoted in streaming platforms and stuff? I just the best case is this, people reacting to it or talking about it on YouTube. I know a lot of people, they do these kind of first reactions or commentaries, they use the footage. I don't know how they get away with it, because there have been times I'll do a review, I just have a 2 minute trailer, and then 2 months later, the video gets blocked. So, yeah, it is what it is. What can you do? I like that even this scene here, there's a nice smoky atmosphere to it. I touch him. He just slapped. I think he's touching you back. And yeah, I like the delivery. I think Abbott Costello do a really good job delivering these lines. Just they were studied, just like the Three Stooges, like just like these other ladies. They were studied and having to provide entertainment in these stand-up acts and routines that they had to really be stringent on their timing to get people to laugh and cheer and get people just people think it's tough nowadays. Think how it was back then. World War One, World War Two, Prohibition, the Great Depression, all this series of events that people today would lose. Like people today who go on TikTok and they fucking complain about blah 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 blah. You don't know jack shit about hard times. Dusty Rose said, "You know, baby, what the mean by hard times?" I can't do a Dusty Rose impersonation to save my life. But learning history. World War One, World War Two, Great Depression, Prohibition. I can't blame the guy. You know, what would you think if you saw a guy driving but not driving? A guy's practicing rowing is like, be careful, the waves are coming. That guy definitely has a boxer's type of face. It was a shame too. Like in this era, you never really had these guys cross over. What I mean by that is, the Three Stooges meet up with Abbott Costello, or Lauren Hardy meets the Three Stooges, or like a movie to have all of them, like the Expendables of comedians. The Expendables, all the action stars together. Like all the comedians, like Abbott Costello and the Three Stooges and Lauren Hardy and the Marx Brothers, you get all of them together. But I guess either A, studios, they had their own actors, they had their own productions, these are our stars, who would get a piece of the box office pie, we could make more money just with our guys alone than sharing it with other people. Maybe also ego, like who's going to get the bigger jokes, or who's going to get the bigger laughs, or who's going to get more screen time, or maybe other events that just wasn't the case. So the guy who plays the Invisible Man is a guy named Arthur Franz, and he lived until 2006. So he lived a long time. Passed away at the age of 86. He was a B-24 Liberator Navigator in the U.S. Army Air Force. And he stayed from a POW camp. He was in the Sands of Iwo Jima in 1949. The Teen Mutiny, Battle Taxi. Just to pretend to be with the... Now, of course, at this point, you would think the thing is rigged, because you could tell his hand never even touches the thing. But they would just think, okay, the thing is rigged. You rigged this thing to do it. Because you could clearly see he's not even touching it. But it's just a comedy. You just go along with it. So that guy, Rotti Hanlon, Tommy's rival in the poem, is a guy named John Dahim. And don't know what else he's been in. And then the main bad guy, the guy I was talking before about, did his manager get the hint, and he's the more gangster guy. That guy is Sheldon Leonard. He lived until 1997. He was in a film called Another Thin Man. Sinbad the Sailor, 1947. Look at the trivia. The last names of Bud Abbott and Lou Costello's characters, Bud Alexander and Lou Francis, are actually their real middle names. This was originally intended to be a straight sequel to Invisible Man, but after the huge success of Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, the script was rewritten to make it another thriller comedy. Several shots are from Universal's The Invisible Man Returns, 1940. The scenes where the guinea pig is turned invisible, reverse footage. The harness of the invisible guinea pig moving around his cage. The scene where the invisible man is unpacking his suitcase of clothes left outside in the woods. Huh. Lou Costello was actually an amateur boxer in Paris and New Jersey under the name Lou Teen because he didn't want his mother to find out about it. He won 32 straight fights before being knocked out. The loss, combined with the fact that his mother finally found out what he was doing, ended his boxing career. Abbott Costello faced personal demons at times. Both were gamblers, serious health problems. But Abbott suffered from epilepsy and turned to alcohol for seizure management. That's what I was talking about with the addiction. Lou Costello had occasional near-fatal bouts with rheumatic fever. In the 1950s, their popularity waned with the emergence of D. Martin and Jerry Lewis. Also, overexposure. Each year they made 2 new films, and then their older films were reissued. They had a film TV series widely syndicated, and the same routines appeared on the Colgate program. This is 1951. A few years later, in 1955, the Universal dropped the comedy team after they could not agree on contract terms. In the early 50s, the IRS charged them for back taxes, forcing them to sell their homes and most of their assets, including the rights to most of their films. In 1956, they made one independent film, Dance With Me, Henry, and Lou Costello was the subject of the TV program This Is Your Life. Then the partnership was gone in 1957. Now, it says here, Errol Flynn claims he triggered the breakup. That Errol Flynn had invited them. He says this in his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. He said, Errol Flynn had invited Abbott Costello, their wives and children, to his house for dinner. He commenced a show home movie that accidentally turned out to be a hardcore porn. Errol Flynn pretended to be baffled. Costello and Abbott blamed each other, and apparently that was the final straw. Why Errol Flynn didn't just fucking admit it then? Kind of shitty for him. In his last years, Lou Costello made about 10 solo appearances on The Steve Allen Show, doing his old routines without Bud Abbott. The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock, that was the film he did. That was a take on Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. The 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock. He died of a heart attack 3 days short of his 53rd birthday. Bud Abbott attempted to come back in 1960, but Bud Abbott quit, saying no one could ever live up to Lou. In 1966, Bud Abbott voiced his character in a series of 156 5-minute Abbott Costello cartoons made by Hanna-Barbera. He died of cancer in 1974. And that's the thing, when you look at their films, they made a lot in the 1940s. I said 30s, but 30s was more their stand-up at the 40s. I mean, (1940) One Night in the Tropics. 1941, Buck Privates, which is really the film that brought them... film-wise is what people really noticed these guys. They made 4 movies in 1941. 4 in 1942, 2 in 1943, 2 in 1944, 3 in 45, 2 in 46, 2 in 47, 3 in 48, including Meet Frankenstein, 2 in 49, 1 in 50, 2 in 1951, this and Turn Around the Mountain, Jack and the Beanstalk, Lost in Alaska in 52, Abbott Costello Show, 1952 and 1954, Abbott Costello Meet Captain Kidd, 1952, Abbott Costello Go to Mars, 53, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 53, Meet the Keystone Cops, 55, Meet the Mummy, 1955, Dance With Me, Henry, 1956. Box office ranking, they were 3rd in 1941, 1st in 42, 3rd in 43, 8th in 44, 16th in 47, 3rd in 48-49, 6th in 50, 4th in 51, 11th in 52, 20th in 53. In 1994, Jerry Seinfeld, who says Abbott Costello were strong influences on his work, hosted a TV special, Abbott Costello Meet Jerry Seinfeld, on NBC. The special was said to have been seen in 20 million homes. Abbott Costello got referred to a lot of Looney Tunes cartoons in the 40s. Bugs Bunny's famous catchphrase, "Ain't I a stinker," was borrowed from Lou Costello. Is that true? I mean, it's Wikipedia. I know, who knows it. I mean, I'm just saying this is what it says, so. Rain Man, they referenced the Who's On First skit from the Abbott Costello. There's a TV movie called Bud and Lou, starring Harvey Korman as Bud Abbott, Buddy Hackett as Lou Costello. In the film Arrival in 2016, the two alien beings are named Abbott and Costello by the scientists, because the one named Abbott is taller and quieter, while the other, Costello, is shorter and chattier. So. Yeah, I like that insult. The girls looking at Lou Costello like, there's not much to this guy. And the bad guy goes, good. That means there won't be much distance. What was he see? He's like, there won't be much room for him to fall when he takes a dive. It's like an interesting, different way of telling how someone's fat. And that's something that was typical of this scene with a lot of Abbott Costello movies, is that a lot of times Lou Costello would get the girl. Not many times Bud Abbott would get the girl. Just because Lou Costello is portrayed more as the innocent, sympathetic, goofier guy, while Bud Abbott is much more of the straight arrow, meaner guy. I just kind of like Bud Abbott is David Spade to Lou Costello's Chris Farley. I think one of the reasons I do like this film is not just because I'm a fan of Abbott Costello. I like their, again, the rapport, delivery of their dialogue, their antics. Another reason is because of nostalgia, because it's, I watched this series of Abbott Costello films, the ones I mentioned before, quite a bit. But I also like the invisibility effects. I think they look pretty neat for the for this time period. Like this bit here, it looks pretty cool that you know you see the noodles disappearing into thin air like that. I mean, that still looks really good. Be careful, don't be like Lady and the Tramp. Now that I know is there was a bit of a cut when it was just staying there stationary after he cut. If you look carefully, you tell there's a cut for when it gets zipped up. So that was a little bit noticeable, but the rest of it looks fairly good for a film from this time period. Interesting that he just had that water gun the whole time. So yeah, he was only 53 years old when he passed away. Man, way too soon. I mean, that means if he. Yeah, I mean, if it worked out better, he would have at least survived to the 1970s, like Bud Abbott did. Maybe even the 80s. It's a shame, so because maybe, you give it 5 years or 10 years, maybe he's like, you know what? Let's try one more time. Never a chance of reunion or anything. It's too bad. I mean, it is what it is. Here we go. Sorry, now I'm just watching the film. I apologize. It's funny, when he's drunk, he sounds a little bit like Dean Martin. I mentioned the Three Stooges. I know that Shemp actually were in a couple of those movies. I can't remember. It was like Buck Privates or Buck Privates Come Home or both. Like Shemp was in a couple of these movies. And one thing I heard was that on set, people found Shemp even funnier than Luke Costello, and Luke Costello wasn't really that happy about it. Probably because why? Guess that's the reason why you didn't see Shemp more often after that. In after Costello movies, because again, from what I heard, on set people thought Shemp was funnier, like behind the scenes. Now I think when I first saw this back in the day, my aunt would tape it, and I don't know. I don't know if it was because this is how it was in syndication, or my aunt would for some reason cut things out for no reason whatsoever. But this whole bit still seems new to me because this part would be cut out. It would go from the middle of the invisible guy on the phone talking about how to destroy to this and that, being drunk while Bud Abbott is listening. It would cut there, and it would jump to when Luke still is showing the pieces of the record. Right here. Ideally, it would go from there to here, and that's section between where Bud Abbott's pretending to be drunk and Luke Costello accidentally pours. For some reason, that was cut out when I would watch this back in the day. I don't know why. Again, I don't know. If that was a syndication thing, then for some reason my aunt did that. I don't know why. Don't know. And it's one of those things you look back on these type of films and just a whole different world of movie making. The way the actors are, the way they give their dialogue, the verbiage they use, the way people behave. Nowadays, to be worried about whether someone's PC or not. In this era, you didn't have anybody cursing. You had no nudity. Hell, they wouldn't even show like a bathroom or like a toilet or a toilet flushing. Like, all these things that you just big and small, they wouldn't use and showcase and show. All these certain rules used during this era of movie making. So in a way, because of these limitations, they had to really get, in a way, creative on how to shoot these movies. I mean, it would be interesting. I'm not saying it would be successful. I wouldn't. It wouldn't. Whether it be successful or not, that's another matter. But it would be interesting to see what these comedians could do with the rules and limitations of this era. whether it be, all these comedians, whether it be Kevin Hart, whether it be, take your pick of these comedians, Paul Rudd, like what they could they accomplish what these guys could do back in the day, where you don't have all the special effects of the world, you have to all these certain words, verbiage you could use. I think a lot of people would find it rather tough. Even that's an interesting shot. Like that right there. Like, would it be wire work or some other way they showcase it? Again, that's another thing that as a kid I remember being impressed by. Because even as a kid, I realized that this is much older film. Of course, here is all about pantomime acting, like you're cheering someone. Kind of like you would have to do with ad-libbing. Well, obviously, they're not. How do you add like you're carrying someone heavy? It's not easy. It takes talent to have that much imagination to pretend. It's for that running gag there of everyone seeing the psychiatrist. Now, more likely that's done with, okay, we have this cast caved in. We have some kind of rig where we move the thing like he's turning his head. Then you put like a, fake body underneath. Sorry, I'm not saying much. I'm just watching the film. I apologize for that. Because now this is just pretty much the end of the exposition to set up the third act, the big boxing match, where Lou's going to get his ass kicked, but then Lou's going to be great, but it's really this guy doing it and dealing with the mobsters, the gangsters. But trying to think now, like, so Frankenstein, they met Frankenstein monster, Dracula, and the Wolfman. This one, you had the Invisible Man. Another one was Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. One was the Mummy. So I'm trying to think of, like, what other monsters could they have met? I guess the only ones I could think of is the Phantom of the Opera or the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Or what, like, that era of these, like, big animal sci-fi movies, like Them and The Blob. Like, I don't know why. For some reason, I'm thinking Abbott Costello meet the Blob would be interesting. I don't remember Bud Abbott holding Lou Costello when the guy had his arms like this. Maybe he did. Also, I'm thinking, who the fuck was there to take those pictures? But anyway, maybe I'm just out of it. I don't have the best memory, I will admit. DDT. What was it, Jake the Snake Roberts? Do the DDT. Of course, this the DDT meant, other stuff. But trying to. Oh yeah, like I would say I would just tell him meet the Blob. That would have been a fuck little better than Beware the Blob. Wherever the fuck that movie was. Just, just maybe that's a superstitious thing. And I would say Abbott Costello is definitely one of my favorite comedy teams. I mean, throughout the years, you think about it, like the 1920s was more Laurel and Hardy. The 1930s, probably more Three Stooges. 30s to the 40s. Abbott Costello kind of ruled the 40s. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, although these guys had their time to shine too in the 50s, as well as Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. I'm not sure if there was any in the 60s. I mean, that's true. That's a funny way of show. Yeah, taxes always get the bigger cut. One for me, one for you, one, two, three for him. And then throughout the year, you had like Cheech and Chong being a comedy team, on others. I don't know if we really have comedy teams nowadays. I mean, there'd be people that made franchises, 21 and 22 Jump Street, the Harold and Kumar trilogy. Even that little effect there where you have the waistband go up and dip back in. There's some nice little underrated special effects in this. The idea, and I commend them for a movie back then in showcasing. And of course, when I think of comedy and boxing, I always think of the Three Stooges, where when Larry does the violin, a Pop goes the weasel, and then Curly goes ape shit crazy and just punching everybody and not realizing what's going on. And then his violin just broke, so he's gotta go run. They get a radio, bring it over, so Curly could go crazy and win. And then the music pops in again. He knocks out Larry and Moe, and then Curly's going to the camera, ready to fight the viewer. Then the short ends. God, this guy in the middle, the ref, his eyebrows are just all the way up here. For some reason, the ref in there is like the eyebrows just all the way up here. The guy said, "What the fuck you punching me for?" Oh shit. Well, you're the one that was letting him get punched there. But I would think Luke Costello would enjoy this bit because, I mean, if he was a boxer back in the day, kind of relive some glory days here. I kind of like that too, like the guys like mimicking words on how to fight so that to make it quote more believable for the crowd. Although in the crowd, you would think that just the fight's being fixed because the whole crowd be going, he's not connecting. And then the whole crowd would be like, this guy's bullshit. He's not fucking doing it. And of course, he knocks him out. IH has and he trips it. It's the other guy. And it's all about physicality and slapstick and ooh, right in the neck. Like those are. There you go. Like when he's punching Lou Costello, they look pretty close. So that's pretty good, bombing his head back. Makes me wonder why when Lou Costello punches, why he doesn't try to get closer to try to sell the punches better. To sell the punches a bit more. Because that's the point, is to really show the audience that he's not doing it, the Invisible Man's doing it. So to show the distance in between. Otherwise, maybe in some weird way, the audience would just think, oh, Lucas Costello's beating him up, not the Invisible Man. So you leave the guy hanging, that's funny. You just leave Luke Costello hanging there. You know, he's saying every one of the punches been short. What? Maybe you should think. Maybe other guys throwing the fight too. Well, I mean, Lucha still trusts him, and then he leaves his ass. And to do what? To hear, yeah, you're getting ready to get killed. Like, you already knew that. So now you're just letting the guy get the shit kicked out of him. Leaving him high and dry. What a dick. I like that. What are you doing? I'm smelling. That's poor English, but you certainly do. I think when I was a kid, I didn't get that joke, but now it's like, yeah, he thinks Luke Costello is saying, I stink. And that's why he's saying, I'm smelling. And so the guy goes, he, that's poor English, but you do. That's okay, Tommy. Just let Lou, just let Costello get the shit kicked out of him. Great job, Tommy. What an asshole. You let him get the shit kicked out of him. In reality, they probably would call the fight if someone's stumbling that much. Stop stalling. You weren't there to help him, asshole. Fuck you, Tommy. You weren't fucking there. You left him to get the shit kicked out of him. You tell him to step out of it, you let him get the shit kicked out of him. What do you expect? What an asshole. I do like Luke Costello's physical acting in this to make it seem like he's being held up. Boom. Like the stomach and upper cut, they look pretty good. They look like they would be legitimate. And the other stuff do look legitimate in the stomach and uppercut. But the others is like they're this far away. I think maybe it's one of those things where again they wanted to showcase as much as they could that the Invisible Man was a part of it, or I don't know, maybe different from fights in today. I don't know. It's not a big deal. You think a lot of people would just be thinking that someone was throwing the fight. Sorry, I'm not saying much during the last bit here, just because I've not only have I said all that I need, but then I gotta do a review for this after the fact. Yeah, he does now. There you go. And there's been a couple films that try to do that black and white old school movie, The Good German, for example, but they just, I don't know, were not accomplished in the right way, in my opinion. I still think that if you try to do a film in this era, black and white, it would be an interesting experiment. It's just, you have to do it the right way, too. The right strip, the right type of directing. I still think it'd be very interesting to see. Like, try to do a film, but you look at what they had in this era in terms of technology, filmmaking, no CGI. If you do effects, you have to do it like how they did it back in the day. I think that would be interesting to see, and it would make the land of films being dumped on streaming services at least more unique and more variety. Of course, we said up earlier that smoking fog, you could see them. This is a cool effect too. This knife that sticks there, right there. We see the silhouette of the guy. I like that, Lou Costello is actually a badass here. Look at that. Boom. Knocks him right the fuck out. I like how Bud Abbott just says these two framed him, and the cop just immediately believes them. No due process, no evidence, just, wait, you said these guys did it? I believe you. Take them to jail. Now, I'm trying to think of, like, throughout the years, there hasn't been as many Invisible Man films as you think. There was a Steve Gutenberg film, 3D, called The Man Who Wasn't There, which I haven't seen. There's a movie called The Invisible Maniac, I believe. They seem rather low budget. There was Memoirs of Invisible Man, the John Carpenter film, starring Chevy Chase, which one of my I love John Carpenter. That's one I'm not a big fan of. I think that's one of his weakest movies. And then Hollow Man, of course, which seeing the blood vessels reminds me of Hollow Man. I love Hollow Man. Love that film. Then I had this really shitty direct-to-video sequel, Hollow Man 2. I like the Invisible Man TV show. Didn't last too long, sadly, but yeah, the Invisible Man TV show was fun. And I guess the one that came out a few years ago from the guy who directed, oh, what's his name? The guy who wrote Saw, the first Saw film, and he directed Upgrade. Forget that guy's name, but I like that movie. A lot of people didn't like that one. I liked that Invisible Man movie. Thought that was actually pretty good. But it seems like something that's not done to a tired degree. So in a weird way, it still feels kind of refreshing. I mean, this has a very weird ending too, which doesn't really make any sense. Like he's running, and then when he reappears, he's somehow his half his body's this way and the other half is this way. I don't know why that's the case. It just it makes no sense. With I mean, I know Invisible Man doesn't make sense, but this makes even less sense. I mean, no, but I just need to find a weird way for it to end that get a laugh out of the audience. It just seemed very, I don't know. I don't know why I like that sound effect. Yee. Like, why is his legs backward? It's just so weird. And definitely a weird way to end the film. Yeah, very kind of weird, random way to end it, but still a movie I do enjoy. Watch it again. I do quite enjoy this film. Still give to Abbott to Meet Frankenstein as being the best one, but this is still a film I watched when I was a kid. Had a lot of fun with it. Still rather entertained with it. And I guess I'll do a separate review, but still a fun one, and I miss these guys. Just like I miss that era, the Three Stooges, Red Skelton is another guy. Which I don't have any of his movies, like the Whistling in Dixie, Whistling in the Dark. I don't sadly have any of those movies. But with that said, for those who have followed on, thank you for watching. Thanks once again, Corey. Next, I'll do a review of this. And with that said, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys later. Bye bye.